So this is it, finally the unscripted chat where I share how we started Offploy, the story, the journey we've been on there. This is my second YouTube video in a 52-week commitment of one YouTube video a week. I really wanted to give people an understanding of how we started Offploy and why we started Offploy. We're an organisation that mentors and supports people with criminal convictions, and we've supported over 4,000 socially excluded people since starting almost 10 years ago. I really wanted to get across the journey we've been on today. So this isn't scripted. It's probably not going to be edited very well. But really, I hope it comes across as authentic and gives you the information you need. Just so you know, I've had a little bit of a glow up in terms of not just the haircut, but also with the lights, the technology, just working towards making these YouTube videos better every single week. I do now have a teleprompter, but I won't be using one today. Instead, just above the camera up there, I've got some notes that go through the stages of the story. So you might see me look up there to say, what am I talking about next? But come along for the journey. Let's really get behind the scenes of this and see what it's all about. So let's begin, shall we? Let's jump in. I almost sound a bit like ChatGPT then. So let's dive in. My name is Jacob. I'm an ex-prisoner, and I started an organisation called Offploy, O-F-F-P-L-O-Y, Offploy. We were predominantly known for finding jobs for people with criminal convictions, but in the 10 years have since gone on to support three really distinct groups. The first is individuals at risk of offending, and we help them find houses, open bank accounts, get jobs, just move forward in life. Our vision is a world where every person is safe from crime. That includes people where crime seems to be the only option in their life as well. The second group of people we support are those that mentor and teach and, I guess, support people at risk of offending, predominantly those with convictions in this cohort. So we train the trainers, we provide advice and guidance to people who work in this space. They could be DWP work coaches, right through to probation officers, right through to the local charity down the road from you that just needs some advice and guidance on how best to support someone that's come to them with a criminal conviction. And we run courses, we have accreditations, we do all sorts for that community as well, because we can't do everything ourselves. If our vision, going back to it, is a world where every person is safe from crime, we can't do that by hiring our team of mentors, 70% who have lived experience of the justice system themselves, mentoring, supporting everyone in the world. We need to work with others doing great stuff in this space. And the final audience we work with and support are employers. By helping employers recognize the value and skill and talent that people with convictions have, we'll open up their opportunities. And for us, it's supporting employers taking it from a side project on let's employ some people with convictions to actually there's 1 in 4 adults of working age with a conviction. They are already looking at our roles. How do we not treat it as a side project but make it business as usual? We've supported some major employers, and as of uploading this video, our client pool represents over 60,000 roles. So helping them unlock those 60,000 opportunities for people with convictions, it really does align with our mission of a world where everyone's safe from crime, because getting people jobs reduces reoffending. So super excited about those 3 areas of the service that we run. We also have a charity with donations, and people can donate. We've not figured that out yet. We're not very good at asking for help and asking for donations and telling the stories of the 1,000 people a year we support and lives we change. So that's a journey I'm on to try and figure out. If anyone's got any thoughts, advice and guidance, please do get in touch. I would love to hear it. So Offploy as an organisation has supported over 4,000 socially excluded people. 70% of our team have lived experience of the justice system themselves, and we work across 3 clear areas. We mentor and support people at risk of offending, we upskill people who mentor those with convictions, and we support employers to employ people with criminal convictions. That's us in a nutshell, and we started 10 years ago. Any other facts and stats? We turn over about 1 million a year. 74% of our income is government contracts and services. I'm trying to think of any other fund finance stats we have. We have a team of about 20-something people. So we're a small organisation that's doing big things, and we are using technology to scale what we do really well. I believe our core kind of the bit that makes us special is, yes, lived experience, but actually a solid methodology, a solid use of technology, and then an investment in the people that you hire to ensure they are the best they can be and they feel well supported. So this is what makes Offploy special. Looking at my notes now, I'd love to tell you how we started Offploy and share a little bit about that story. It was 10 years ago on a rainy night. I'm joking. I'm not going to go down that route. But starting Offploy wasn't so straightforward. Before I got involved with the criminal justice system, I always thought people with convictions were from the Shawshank Redemption, Prison Break, or Orange is the New Black. I always thought they were people who were 6 foot tall, skinheads with tattooed knuckles of love and hate. I pictured all of this. I exclusively pictured prisoners as well. People with convictions must have been to prison. And that's not the case. My mind was absolutely blown, but it was blown because I went to prison and I went through this journey. You see, before ending up in that situation, I was Yorkshire's Young Entrepreneur of the Year. I'd won awards off royalty. Richard Branson had invested in me. In fact, at 19 years old, I'd secured over £300,000 investment in a camping business called the Lazy Camper, where we provided a full camping package for you to get to a music festival, have it set up, waiting for you, and then you can leave it behind at the end. And that was the Lazy Camper. That was the idea. It got investment, got lots of press, got lots of attention, but it didn't get any sales. We didn't get the sales we needed. We achieved about 9% of our sales target. And this was all whilst at university, in my second year of university, first year of university. Got the investment. Within a year or two, the business went absolutely, it just didn't work. The revenue wasn't achieved, but got all these awards and accolades in the press. And I was taking drugs whilst at university because I thought that's what you did when you go to university. That's the fun thing to do, right? I made some stupid and regretful choices throughout all of that. And whilst the business was spiraling down, so was I. And instead of asking for help off my parents, off investors, off friends, off family, I took the matter into my own hand as I was going into debt, thinking, well, I'll just pay off this debt by getting involved with drugs. And you fast forward a few months, and ultimately I was being arrested at a music festival. The people arresting me took me to evict me from the festival. And the people looked at my ID. I had my ID on me. I was also wearing my Lazy Camper hoodie, the hoodie for my business, which was a bit strange. And I was arrested with some MDMA and some weed, and with possession with intent to supply. And as they were kicking me out of the festival, the people saw my ID and they said, "Your mum isn't," and then they said, "My mum's name is she." And I said, "How do you know my mum?" And they said, "Well, we've worked with her for 30 years in the police, you idiot, because my mum was a police officer, retired, and my dad was a drugs investigator, retired." And whilst I was in the cells that night, coming down off MDMA and evaluating life choices, mum was having a knock on her door at 4 a.m, asking to confirm all my details. She thought I was dead, whilst the police were trying to understand that this was the house. And then they went and looked around mum's house. And dad, in his house, was having his door knocked on, and yet again, police looking around his house. Like, he was a retired drugs investigator. For my family, what I did to their life in one night was absolutely turned their world upside down. At that moment, they probably should have written me off or left me, walked away, whatever it might be. And yet, after 20-something hours in the police cells, they were the first people to come and pick me up from the music festival, from the police station, sorry. They were the first people to pick me up. And yes, the car ride home was incredibly awkward without a word spoken. And we got home, and mum and dad have separated, but they really came together for this. And I remember mum saying, like, why have you done this to us? And then comes the waiting for the sentencing. And sentencing's not super straightforward in a backed up UK system with lots of delays. It took 11 months for me to be sentenced, and you go to a magistrate's court first, they pass it to a Crown Court. I pleaded guilty at the earliest opportunity. And the judge, I think it was on a Wednesday, the 1st of July 2015, the judge said, I need time to think on this. I'm going to send you down for 2 days and I'll have you back up on Friday. So I went to prison on the first night there, and you go to something called the First Night Centre. This was terrifying. I'm the son of 2 police officers. I did a bit of karate as a kid, but mainly went to drama school and air cadets, so I wasn't hardly going to be able to fight my way out of a prison cell. I remember going into the First Night Centre in the prison, and you're welcomed by a prisoner who's there with the checkboard, ensuring that you've got this done, that done, that done, that done. And he was called Brummy, and he looked inside the cell I was going to be in. Oh, mate, your cellmate's massive, and he likes young-looking men like you, so you best be quiet and don't say anything, all right? My heart was dropping, and then he just started laughing, saying, I'm only joking, it's absolutely fine, but your cellmate is called Mr. Big. And you can just imagine like the emotional journey I was already on. My poor parents, I saw them in the dock when I was in the dock upstairs, and they were through this glass, and they were in tears. Then I was being taken to prison, and I had to get out of my suit from the court because they said the staff said don't wear a suit in prison, they'll eat you alive. Put some tracksuit bottoms on. Like all these experiences and emotions all going on at the same time, and they ultimately cellmate Mr. Big, he stands up, and I'm thinking, oh, this is horrible. Like he was massive, and I thought, this is it. I'm gonna have to punch him. I'm gonna have to do this, otherwise it's gonna be exactly like I saw in Shawshank Redemption. And he stood up, puts his hand out to shake my hand, and just goes, all right, I don't know, think of a fun name, Sean, made that name up. Do you want to watch some Breaking Bad? And he had a DVD player because he'd been in prison for so long for selling thousands of pounds of heroin on the outside. He had a nice watch, he had all of this. I was lucky to land in a cell with him compared to, for example, someone that was on in the waiting room as you get delivered to the prison was absolutely shaking, sweating, really what they call rattling, and I didn't know what that means when they were rattling. And I was like, you okay? Do you need help? He went, yeah, I'm fine. I've just done a load of heroin before I came in. And there's me who was in for like drug dealing and never really seeing that world, thinking it was all just uni drugs and all such a good time. And then you see someone who's truly dependent, truly having the worst time of their life, and I didn't even realise you could smoke heroin, let alone, I thought he injected it loads before he went in the prison, and just absolutely shows what you don't know. And I could have ended up in a cell with someone who was really struggling like that, someone who needed help and support, who I'd have probably been concerned about, a bit nervous about, all these different elements. And I was put with Mr. Big, who liked to keep the cell clean and had been around prison for long enough. It was just a kind of, what do they call it? Something of the profession. I'm sure you can think of the word. A risk of the job almost to go to prison for him. He had a family on the outside, seemed pretty established. What can you say? And for 2 days, we were in pretty much a cell, locked up full time together, watching Breaking Bad. Sounds horrible, I know, for me, poor Jacob. I had a girlfriend at the time who stuck with me throughout my prison sentence, and we were together for, a good 6 or 7 years beyond that. So it was quite a serious relationship, despite only meeting a few months before. So I was missing her, missing my family. It was pretty crap, thinking, why have I done this to them? Why am I here? It was a lot of self-pitying as well at the time, and a lot of worry about kind of people finding out about my parents. 2 days later, I was up to be taken to court. I didn't have a chance for a shower. They didn't let me get out and shower, which weirdly, sociopathically, I thought, well, at least that makes me look a bit more dishevelled. Maybe the judge will go easy on me. My suit was all creased. Silly, I was thinking all this. It's just you work what you've got, and I was taken up to sentencing to get back in what they call the sweat box, a van that drives from HMP. Leeds, what is it called? Leeds, Armley Prison, and then taken to the court. Same judge, same barrister, same defence team, whatever it were, and he said, I've looked at the case, I've got sentencing powers within this range and remit. I've tried to avoid a prison sentence, but on this occasion I cannot. You had all the trappings of a successful person, given your parents' life, given the life you had beforehand. It was a lesson of not asking for help ultimately, and he sentenced me to 28 months. And I saw my mum cry, I saw my family through the box again. I've not seen them or spoke to them in the last couple of days. It'd be another week till the phone credit was added to the prison system so I could call them. So it's all pretty strange scenario. Newspapers were in the room, and it hit the press. It hit the press so hard that was on the Friday, and over the weekend and early the week after, lots of newspaper articles about Richard Branson's backed entrepreneur, arrested for drugs at a music festival mogul, all these different things, like all these horrible headlines. And one of them, I believe, was around my parents being police officers, and that got around the prison, and it could have been brutal. But had it not been for Sean, the cellmate, he said to the other prisoners, this kid's all right. He obviously didn't follow in his parents' footsteps, so no harm needs to come to him just because of his parents' job. And I was in that prison for 19 days and ultimately then got moved to a lower category security prison. I kept with Sean, Mr. Big, throughout those days. Met many prisoners, met many interesting people. I expected evil, horrible people in prison, and there's a couple of people who are unstable and unsafe to kind of just not be permanently supervised, if you ask me. There are other people who haven't yet found the path of kind of, let's do something honest and positive with these skills and this determination I have in life. They're the ones that the press and the police would have you believe are the baddies, and then there's potentially a group of people who are just pure evil, and I appreciate that are in there for varying crimes that you just, hard to even speak about. So that was my first prison experience, and then I got moved from that prison to a second prison in Wealdstone in North Yorkshire, and would be there for the remainder of my sentence. So I got sentenced to 28 months. You do typically half inside, and then if you are under a certain amount of time and good behaviour and you can be released on an ankle tag, which is a home curfew, where you have to be in your house from, I think it was 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. or something like that. So I was really looking forward to that tag date, and I got out on the tag date. So I got out after 9.5 months inside, I think it was, 294 days or 42 weeks, something along those lines, but I wasn't counting. And every day I wrote a prison diary. Every day I wrote a little bit about what I'd seen, what I've heard, how I feel, what's going on. It became a great time for no distractions, no pinging, no technology, as we all probably have right now, and certainly something that I'd like to find a way to mentally get back to without having to go to prison, where I'm not seeing my phone ping off every 2 minutes. A lot of time to think. My first job in prison, well, first of all, I met an amazing prisoner on the courtyard who ran things, as it were, and he knew I wasn't a bad kid and actually enjoyed the way I talked and all these funny things. Said, "You're posh," and I'm really not posh, but maybe I've been brought up in a completely different world to him. That's certainly the truth. And he got me a job in the sewing machine workshop, where my job was to sew together 200 pairs of boxer shorts every day. And this was where the first kind of prisoner that really opened my eyes, that really stood out to me, was a chap called Randy. I'm having to make up my names here. And Randy was my line manager. And there were 5 of us working on a line, doing different elements of producing 200 pair of boxer shorts every day. And he only had to quality check about 20% of them, but he chose to quality check 100% of them. He'd been in and out of prison from the age of 16 to 24, in and out. And he was quality checking 100% of the boxer shorts. And I was like, why? Like, you only have to do 20%, do that and take an easy life. He was like, first of all, what else would I do with my time? Second of all, imagine you getting on the first night and the boxer shorts aren't the right size because they've been mislabeled, or there's a hole in them, or they're falling apart. now think of someone with a difficult mental health challenge, what that could do to them. And he was right. And he was someone who really cared about his work and someone who was really passionate, despite being on the outside involved with drugs, involved with robbing people's homes and all that side of it all. And it's this kind of cognitive dissonance of like the people who have done bad things but seem to have good qualities. And it really kind of shook me. And I knew it was like that moment that it was like, oh my gosh, someone's helped me get in this workshop. Someone's running this production line really well. It's absolutely incredible to see at 24 years old. Who wouldn't hire people like this, the values that they have, and if they're given opportunities to earn a consistently and a good living, it's so much better than thinking I best go graft to earn a couple of grand here and a couple of grand there. Go be proud of what you produce. Go show your kids, and they all had kids, and I want to do something a bit better for my children. And that's where the first kind of idea for Offploy came around, and that was about 3 months into my sentence. And it was going to be a recruitment agency for ex-prisoners exclusively. And I got to work on the business plan, and in the business class, the tutor, because she knew about my press and all that stuff, a wonderful lady, asked me to come and deliver a couple of classes and talk to the men inside about how I started a business and what I've been through. And she let me use the computer to write the next business plan for Offploy, what was going to be called Open Gate Recruitment. Go figure, not the best name, but hey, yeah, I had a lot of time to think, but not a lot of time to solidify and bounce ideas off people. My job switched from sewing boxer shorts to working for the St. Giles Trust as a housing mentor, someone that mentors and supports people inside the prison to find housing on the outside. So when people were coming up to release, we would fill out their forms, we would support with a few bits around their benefits and stuff like that. What an absolute honour, like to be able to know when people are released. It was one of the most trusted roles in the prison. You got a lot of free time if you wanted to. I could have gone to the gym for 8 days a week, but you can tell, didn't really do that. I should have probably done that 8 times in a week, not 8 days a week, but it's amazing how, yeah, even all the time in the world, no alcohol, nothing, no excuses. I still couldn't make it to the gym 8 times in a week. Barely went 2 or 3 for no other reason other than laziness, because the guys there were incredibly supportive and keen to see people work hard and do well in the gym. But being able to support people, just prepare for release was an honour. And then you also saw a lot of the challenges people had waiting for release around, I actually don't have anywhere to live. I don't know how I'm going to get my dog back. I want to see my kids. I want to do all these different things. And I'm saying, you've got to go to this approved housing first. And it was tough at times, but it really gave me insight into what the needs of people with convictions who aren't me are. And one of my colleagues and co-workers was an amazing chap called Richard. Yes, that's Richard of Offploy fame. So if you look on Offploy's website, certainly at the time of recording this, and hopefully when you watch it in a year's time, you'll see my amazing colleague Richard Strauss, who's been with us. He was released 2-3 years after me. So I got out and started hammering away, starting Offploy. Then he was released and he joined in and tried varying roles in the organisation before finding out that he's exceptional at bid writing, partnerships, and getting us in with government contracts and services to really scale Offploy. That 74% of our income as it currently stands is done by Richard and his team, so hats off to him for that. And then having another prisoner to talk to. There was other prisoners to talk to throughout. There were real people, real business-focused people. So there was Richard, who I'd speak to on the courtyard, Gary. There were prisoners who were just friends who just wanted to play pool, prisoners who wanted to go to the gym. It was just a full cross-section of life and society. There were people with significant challenges. I remember my cell on the first wing I was put onto. I was on one wing for 2 days, then moved to the new side of the prison. Next to my cell was the 24-hour watch cell. So it was empty most of the time, but when it was full, there was often someone in there who was significantly distressed and disrupted, and a prison officer would sit outside the cell and watch them through the perspex door just to make sure they didn't harm themselves or kill themselves, I'm sorry to say. And it was a time of just recognising that there's people that come from all different walks of life, but ultimately we can do something for prisoners. There are so many gems inside that dirt of a place, I guess, that there's people coming out who would take those opportunities but don't think they're good enough for the opportunity and don't think anyone would give them a chance. So this was the idea behind Offploy, or as it was then, Open Gate Recruitment. There was then staff members who made all the difference. So you had the tutor in the education department that allowed me to use the computers to write the business plan and then posted it to me on release. What an amazing person there. And then you had the work coaches who relied on us to help people get the forms filled out for their DWP benefits or for their housing application. And then there was the National Careers Service at the time, and the National Careers Service gave £15,000 to another couple of prisoners who got out to help them start a recruitment agency. But unfortunately, one of those prisoners came back for a drug-related offence, so they said, we can't fund anything like that ever again and anymore. But it's the people, not the organisation, that make decisions and make changes. And there was this one work coach, I'm going to call him Joffrey. I'm obviously really struggling with my names coming up with these at the moment, who just believed in me. He was just so lovely. He just gave me all the time of day attention and looked at the business plan, and he'd always think like this. He's moved off to New Zealand now. He's had a great time. And he says, we can't give you any money, but I've had this person get in touch that wants to support prisoners, and she's called Rachel. That's her real name. She'll speak to you. Here's a number. You're due for release next week. My sentence had moved on. Get in touch with Rachel. And this was really the start of Offploy. But before I call Rachel, I always have release to think about. And I was so nervous about release. I was so excited. I was so scared that my tag wouldn't come through. I was worried about all the press or anything like that, that I wouldn't ever be able to start up life again. I might have to go work for someone else for a little bit. I'd certainly have to go on benefits for a while. And I'd go back to my parents' house. I remember being released from the prison. I got rid of all my items the night before. I gave my flip-flops to some guy who wanted them. I'd saved up for a piano keyboard inside the prison. Still terrible at it, but I wanted to learn it. Some lad took that. My prison radio took that. People, everything goes away. I don't know if you've seen a film called Lord of War with Nicolas Cage, and he lands a plane in somewhere in Africa, and overnight the people come in, and this full plane gets broken down into its carcass, essentially. Every bit gets taken, and I ended up leaving the prison with the clothes I were wearing and a bag of all my letters and my prison diary. That was it. That's all I needed, right? And my rest of my clothes, once I got out, I was going to burn them and get rid of them after wearing them for 9.5 months solidly. And that was coming out release. My mum and my nan were there. How amazing. And I remember getting like big cuddles, big hugs. Nan took a photo for us. We've still got that somewhere. Crazy times, like crazy. It just felt so strange being released, finally being out. I had to be home by a certain amount of time. I had to see a probation officer by a certain amount of time. I then had to be there for my ankle tag to be fitted. I wanted to see my girlfriend at the time, obviously, and I wanted to get a sandwich from my favourite shop in my local town in the north of England called Brighouse. I really wanted that sandwich. I originally asked Mum if we could drive around the perimeter of the prison just to see the size of how little my world was for 9.5 months. But by the time I got out, I just wanted to get home. I can't believe how fast cars move. I was used to walking, just that's all you're doing, walking to one gate, to one gate, to one gate. No kind of like, even if you're running on the treadmill in the same space. When the car's going like even 30 miles an hour, I felt the speed of it. It was something that was really profound, and we got onto the motorway, and my goodness, I think I fell asleep on the way home. I was just absolutely gone. I think you carry all this around prison thinking, am I going to get stabbed? Am I going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person? And that was my parents are just full of love. They visited me every 2 weeks. They were wonderful to me. I saw everyone. My visits list were filled. I remember getting letters, 3 letters a day almost every day from people writing in the kindness. I was always replying to people as much as I could, and I actually got overwhelmed with letters at one point, so you can imagine my letter bag is huge. One day I only got 1 letter though, and I remember feeling really sad when there's people in there who haven't had letters for 3 years, let alone 3 letters a day on average. And I remember being really sad about it, and then I opened and I looked at the letter, and it said from Necker Island. What? On the day I get 1 letter, it was from Necker Island. I opened it, and it was a lovely note from Richard Branson. And yes, probably his team organised it and got it there, but the words meant so much to me. That went pinned up on the board, and every day when I was working on Open Gate recruitment, what became Offploy, I just pictured that and I was like, I'm going to get out and I'm going to make the most of this. And that was huge for me to get that letter. I also was able to convince the prison staff to let my mum send in lots of shiny card and craft card and all these different different bits of card essentially around Christmas, and I got all the lads who wanted to be making paper chains, and we decorated the full wing, and it was just nice to see all the lads do an activity together and kind of be proud of something they've built. One guy went and ripped them down and now understand a lot of anger he probably had inside that he didn't want to see Christmas. But instead of everyone losing their head and going wild about it, the lads just worked together, made a new card, made a new chain for it and put it back up, because he got booed for doing it. But I wish I'd have gone to him and said, why don't you talk to me about Christmas a little bit? In fact, my cell had 2 cushioned chairs in it. You shouldn't even have one in them, but I said my cell is a zone of no negativity, and if you walk past the door, you can't come in and say, this is rubbish, I hate this. You've got to come in here and be positive, but you can sit and talk about things if you want to. And more often than not, I'd pot on the kettle. Someone would come in, sit down, we'd have a chat, and I loved it. I absolutely loved being able to listen, hear people's stories. I became a Samaritan's listener whilst in prison, one of the most honoured jobs I could do, something I felt absolutely proud of doing. So when someone's, really struggling on night time, they can press a bell and 2 Samaritan listeners, whoever's on shift that night, get woken up. You go to their cell, you sit and you have a chat with them to check they're all right. They'll start off saying, I just wanted a lighter, mate. And it's like, well, we've just got up in the middle of the night. We don't have lighters. So do you want to sit and have a chat about anything? Is there anything you want to talk about whilst you've got us with no one here? And often you'd find it was like a presenting problem was the lighter, and there's always something we can talk about, right? And just seeing people open up and just listening, not giving advice, and just being there with them and letting their thoughts fill the room. What an absolute honour. I should bring that with me more, to be honest. I'm used to talking so much and talking a lot. I could do with slowing down a little bit and listening. Looking at my notes, we've covered quite a lot. So I was released from prison and I printed out the business plan. So I had that in my hand. Didn't want to lose that. And thankfully the prison then sent me a CD with the business plan burnt onto it, or and posted it to my home address. And this was where I wanted to call Rachel, this person. Remember Rachel? By the way, I got home. Parents, lovely, amazing. Girlfriend, lovely, amazing. Stayed at my dad's house. Was on tag there. Took some getting used to being on tag, but so did being home in general. So 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock every night, back home, even though I'd probably be home before that. It was nervous. One time I almost didn't make it and I had to use taxis and all sorts of means to get back, otherwise an alarm goes off, they call you and they need to check you're in the house, so it needs to be within the vicinity of the house. I remember with the ankle tag, you have to go and put your foot in as far every corner of the house as possible whilst they're setting it, and it just made me think, why did they have to put it on my foot first before doing that? Couldn't we have kept it in the hand and whatever? So going to every corner of the house so that it didn't trigger the system when I was in an obscure corner, but nobody puts Jacob in the corner, all right? So that was kind of a strange one. And I think it was day 2, straight back into it. I called Rachel. Now I was nervous to get back into business because I thought that was the reason I failed. That was the reason I went and got involved with drugs. No, drugs were a decision. The way I handled stress, the way I handled failure was the wrong decision, not getting involved with the business. I was on benefits for the first 6 weeks of my release, and I was on this benefits program where you go on and it's all about starting a business. So it was a lot easier than kind of having to go and prove that I'd searched for 200 jobs that day, for example. But I had my business plan in hand. I spoke to Rachel. Now, thankfully, Rachel's from a recruitment background, so she understood everything I was trying to do and she loved the idea. She was really supportive. She passed me on to her boss, who I think he was called Rob or something like that. And Rob said, you should speak to my boss, Nigel. And I spoke to Nigel on the phone, and I said to Nigel, I'm starting this business. I'd love to do it. I'm looking for an investor to really help me start up what I could do. Can I come meet you? Can we talk about this and see if we can make it a success? I can't believe I was so bold and forward, but I was so driven. I was so driven to make this work. that 2 weeks after my release from prison, I met Nigel in Leeds in his recruitment office there, thanks to Rachel, obviously. And I remember I had my blazer on, it was a bit too tight, I was all misfitted, I was in trainers, I was in jeans, my jeans had a hole in the crotch because I'd not got them replaced for years whilst going around prison, before prison as well. I just didn't really have it wasn't the best. But Nigel saw through it all. Because I was so nervous and sweating and looked very shaggy, he asked me if I was still taking drugs, and I was like, no, not at all, I'm just nervous. And 4 weeks later, no, and then he was like, okay, I'd like to go further with this because I needed about £36,000 to start it. 18,000 for my salary and 18,000 for kind of running costs of what would be the organisation for the first year. He needed time to think on it, and in that time I also applied for an award from Unlimited, and in that time I messaged Richard Branson's people again. Ernestina, you wonderful person, you know who you are, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Ernestina invited me down to a competition where people pitched to Sir Richard, and they said, Richard would like to see you afterwards. Do you want to come meet him after the pitching? I wasn't going to pitch, I was going to see him afterwards. Of course I was going to. But I was on my ankle tag, so I had to get permission from the prison. Do you know how you get permission from the prison? You had to fax them. I didn't know where to find a fax machine. Thankfully, you can email a fax online and it faxes back to you, but that was really difficult. Permission to go to London, despite having to be back by 7-8 p.m, because my probation officer wasn't responsible for your tag. The prison's responsible for your tag, so I had to go to London. As permission, and they said, you can go to London, but you've got to be back by 11, and then you've got to stay in your house an extra 3 hours the next day. That's no problem, like absolutely fine. Like, yeah, lock me up, but I'll probably need the sleep anyway. So me and my girlfriend at the time got the train down to London, got this permission. My probation officer said, just don't do anything kind of publicly or pressy, you need to, and I didn't realise because I was in the newspapers for starting Offploy, I would have been, and I remember it presented a risk to my probation officer, and I never even thought of that. I never even thought it would present such a risk, because it was like me going down old behaviours again, like, oh, press, highlight, big life, how long until I crumble back into selling, being involved with drugs and getting involved. So that really stood out as something that was shocking to me, that I had to ask like a probation officer's permission to do anything with the press. And she said, just don't do anything big in the press if you're going to be with Richard and see Richard. And I was invited to Richard's apartment in London, and obviously nervous as hell, spoke to him, told him bits and bats, everything. I don't think I apologised. I think I only asked for things I regret, like just not probably listening more. I was probably nervous and all this stuff, and I got to spend 30 minutes or so, just me, Richard, Matthias, my partner. There was kids' toys around the apartment. It was a family home. It was lovely to see, and Richard said, come on, let's get a photo, and he got this photo, and I'm not going to say no to Richard Branson. He got a pair of scissors out and did this cheesy photo where he's pretending to cut my tag off. It's safe to say my probation officer wasn't very happy at all after that. But she was lovely ever since after that, really. And I even got to work with her in a professional capacity once I'd finished probation, so that was nice. There's so many stories. But leaving the apartment, I refreshed my emails in the back of the taxi, and then something came in, and it was like, congratulations. This was 4 or 5 weeks after my release from prison, 4 weeks maybe. Congratulations, you've just won £5,000 from Unlimited, an organisation that supports social entrepreneurs to get started. And I spoke to someone at Unlimited, and I spoke to a lady over the phone, and she said, well, I told the team after I heard you on the phone, Jacob, after what you said, you better fund this person. She was like a receptionist, or like, she says, you better ensure this boy gets the funding. He really needs it, and he really deserves it. And I got to work with an amazing awards manager called Ashley, but literally leaving Richard Branson's apartment to then getting the email of 5,000. It sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like you can't write it, really. And then obviously all of that combined, probably, I mean, Nigel was probably already invested anyway, emotionally and mentally, but Nigel then said, okay, let's do this, and sent the 30-something thousand. And I bought one of the items I was testing with him was like, can I get this little pod capsule coffee machine for the office? and he approved it. So for me, that was kind of like my little test of what does Nigel fund, what doesn't he fund. He'd go on to invest significant sums after that, of which he's been fully paid off. He hasn't asked for a penny over it. He owns 50% of Offploy. I own the other 50%. But all of our shares are worthless. We can't distribute profit based on our constitution. So they are merely levers for management and voting. What an amazing man that invested in that. And then he plonked Rachel in my office with me in Brickhouse. So she was building her service, I was building mine. He'd invested in both of us. Thank God for Rachel and doing that call with us. And I just, on that one, I remember my friend Sinead, who passed away a year later, maybe even less actually. Yeah, 6-7 months later. Sinead was also in the office with us a lot of the time, helping me edit the first 10 pages of my prison diary to be released as a book, which I hope I do it on our 10th birthday in May this year. We'll see. I need to get to it. I want to honour her memory for it all. What an amazing person. I was with her mum just the other day. 10 years later, we obviously still think and care and think about her a lot. But just thinking back to those times in this little brick office, like white brick walls, it was not much bigger than my prison cell. That was where Offploy really started, and I worked so hard. I loved it. I remember those days of getting up at 6, getting down to the office. I've got a little boy now, and I still get up at 6, but not through my own choice sometimes. I just loved I loved the grind of it all, and I've lost a lot of that in the last few years. But that was getting out and starting the business plan. And I remember for 9 months I couldn't get any more funding, and Nigel just said, because he had 1 year of funding, 3 months left, get out and just start doing something, Jacob. Start mentoring people. So I mentored 15, 14 people from Hull, where Nigel's head office was. I got over there, started working with people, started trying to find them work. Managed to get a few of them into work straight away. This is me, my own lack of experience or anything like that. And as soon as I had stories to tell, I was then able to get local grant funding, and I won a local £20,000 grant for mentoring people with convictions. I won some grants for starting Offploy and for the business of Offploy, but I won grants for mentoring people with convictions, and that's when the service starts to really come to life. And then I got some volunteers from the local university who helped me map out a 9-step candidate journey. And I then hired someone to start a recruitment agency where we recruit people without convictions into prisons, into the prison estate, mainly the education side, charge them a recruitment fee and invest the surplus into supporting prisoners into work. Beautiful social enterprise. It did really well for the first 2 years, hired 4 colleagues, so the income started to come in. Our first invoice was Milton Keynes College for a 1-week placement for £890 something or something. I kept the invoice in a photo frame for long enough, and Nigel still got the copy, his first copy as well. But it proved that there was a business there. And then you fast forward 1.5 years, 2 years, Richard joins us. I then put in a bid for this big European fund, and it was to win £300,000 and mentoring hundreds of people over 3 years. I didn't say this out loud, but I didn't really read the small print, and apparently the value of the bid's 300,000, but you've got to bring £160,000 of additional value yourselves. I hired an extra, so we got some large investments. I asked Nigel for more money. I remember once we didn't have money to pay the payroll. I rang Nigel, and he was on a gurney where he'd had some problems, and the ambulance picked him up. And he's a very fit, healthy man, but it was just a bit of a shock that I called him, and I was like, please, can you send us some money? We don't have payroll, and he still did it. So it just shows kind of the character and style he has as well. And yeah, there was a heck of a load of growth pains. I got this big contract, and then needed to go find other funds of money, and I hired a team from 4 colleagues to 14 colleagues. We were a disruptive mess. We were working for free. We had free officers inside the probation office because it was a great way for us to get referrals and good for the probation to be associated with us. It was really exciting, but there was very little coordination, and this is when Joe joined us. Joe, oh my gosh. Joe is our ops director at Offploy. He's a superhuman, and he hates being celebrated and talked about. He gets embarrassed by it, but he absolutely changed the way we operate. Joe and my long-standing partner at the time, the one that was there from prison, both of them worked together to really systemize Offploy and create a way that it should be run. And yes, that was probably what we were 4 years into our journey then. We're 10 years into our journey now. Life has changed, life's moved on. We're still refining our systems. We were probably doing around 150, 200,000 pounds turnover then. We're doing 1 million turnover now. In fact, we tripled in size twice, and it was over every 3 years. We went from like year one, where I had something like 40,000 pounds worth of revenue, to year three, where it was about 160,000 pounds. And in year six, it was something like 450, 500,000 pounds revenue. And then we dipped a bit and back up. And then year 8, 9 and 10, or 8 and 9, we've done about 1 million in revenue. So now our big goal is by year 12 to go for 5 million in revenue. So that's really exciting to see us scale there. You've got to think differently every time, not just in the products and services you sell, the level of quality you deliver, but the way you operate as a business and as an organization. We've got a charity, we've got a community interest company, but bringing Joe in was kind of our first kind of systemization of what we do. And since then, only recently, we've hired 2 more people that feel expensive, feel scary to hire those roles that we feel, and it's like, oh, this is us playing it seriously now. And it's just great to see kind of, I'm loving doing this video because I'm reflecting back on kind of how it felt like, the whole kind of scrappy startup phase has long gone, but I look back on it with the enthusiasm, the determination, the mess, the naivety, the chaos of it all, and yet we're still here today despite challenges. The government turned off 2 major funding sources for us, 1 year after the other, and then we found other ways to keep the funding going. So you see us do this dip, but then we keep growing, and I just love that we've proven our pioneering qualities, our resilience. And that's through Joe, Richard, and then the delivery team who grind it in, day out, mentoring, supporting people at risk of offending, guiding employers how to do it, training and upskilling frontline advisors. It's amazing to see kind of the work and level and effort that everyone puts into what we do. And everything we do, whilst it is revenue generating, is directly related to our mission. We're not investing in oil futures over there, making a profit and reinvesting that back into what we do. The work we do is impactful towards people at risk of offending as well, and I absolutely love being a part of that and that journey. I've been through so much here today. I've covered a lot. I'm really grateful. I don't know if any one person will make it this far in the video. I'm grateful that you have. I'm grateful for you being here. Life is an absolute roller coaster. If you can do something alongside it all, I've got a beautiful wife, child, all these wonderful things in life now, and they motivate me to grow, to scale, but also the love of every day does that as well. The love of the work I do, the people I'm around, and the motivation for those who play at a different level to ensure that they're still motivated by their leader, their team. Also equally as driven. Culture's everything, and I think if you want to be a growth-based organisation, as Offploy does, and we want to keep scaling, we want a world where every person is safe from crime. Remember that. We're not going to get there by ourselves, and we're not going to get there without growing. We're not going to get there without scalable technology, without investing in the right people, without being incredibly clear on what we do, and without taking risks. This is the journey, the story of starting Offploy in the first few awkward years. But if you've got any questions, if you think I've missed anything, you just pop that in the comments below. This is week 2 of 52 weeks of me practicing YouTube. Every video won't be as long as this. It'll certainly be more edited, more scripted probably, and focus more on employers, particularly for the first quarter. But I would love it if you could like and subscribe if you've made it this far in the video. It makes all the difference, and I look forward to hearing your questions in the comments, or reach out to me if you need help as an employer, as an individual with a conviction, or as someone who mentors them. Just get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll happily pass you on to the right member of the team or help directly where I can. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.